Welcome to Ignite to Impact, a weekly podcast that explores what it takes to make your community, our nation, and the world a better place. You've tuned in to be inspired and enlightened as we pull back the curtain and dive into intimate and energetic conversations with achievers and doers. We are talking with leaders who are in the trenches making phenomenal changes through business, nonprofits, education, and the arts. Our goal? To encourage, motivate, and challenge you to go to the next level in leadership. Now, here's your host, Master Leadership Strategist, Dr. Geneva Williams. So, let's ignite to impact.
Hi, this is Dr. Geneva, and welcome to Ignite to Impact. We're here once again in the fabulous studios of Gerald McBride Voiceover Production Studio, and I'm delighted to bring you conversations with leaders who are making a difference in our community. And guess what? As my very, very first guest for doing this new podcast, I have Jason Lee with me. I'm so delighted. And you know, after a diverse career of engineering at Ford Motor Company, Jason Lee accepted the head of the Detroit area pre-college engineering program. We all call that DAPSEP affectionately. And this was a fabulous effort for him. And after leading that organization for about 12 years and doing wonderful things, he most recently, about a year ago, became the Chief Executive Officer of Focus Hope, a nationally known, well-renowned organization that helps people in communities. So I have really one of those real young forces in the community with me today. And I want you to know that he's attended Harvard Business School Strategic Management Perspectives Program. He's received numerous awards. He works with 100 Black men of Greater Detroit as well as New Detroit. He's been featured as the Michigan Chronicle's Man of Excellence, and he is just an all-around leader, dynamic. And I say, welcome, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great. And thank you, Dr. Geneva, for having me here. And I'm deeply honored to be your inaugural guest for your podcast here. And it's truly an honor.
It is my pleasure. So, you know, Jason, I want to start off with, please let our listening audience know about you.
Wow. So where should I begin? Well, you know, we're here in Detroit, Michigan, and I'm actually a 20-year resident of this great state. And I came from Maryland, grew up in the Maryland, D.C. area, the DMV. Mm-hmm. Went to a all-male Catholic school, which my Catholic upbringing brought me a sense of community and of service. Mm-hmm. Was always kind of smart in math and science, and pursued engineering at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where I had the honor of being a student of Dr. Freeman Hrabowski. Freeman Hrabowski is world renowned as the president of UMBC, and I was a part of what's called the Meyerhoff Scholarship Program. And so the Meyerhoff Scholarship Program took minority students, primarily African American, and gave them support around pursuing degrees in engineering and medicine primarily, but also science. So we were doing STEM before it became that hot topic that many people talk about today in the corporate sector and the need for that. But it was a great program. I was surrounded by very smart Black students who were all interested in being STEM professionals. I met, and at that time at the university was a time of first for Blacks. Now the school was only 25 years old. It was a small university. It was a satellite location of University of Maryland system. And it was during that time frame when I was there was the time, it was the first Black received an A in calculus in the school's history.
Okay, so you a smart one, huh?
Wasn't me. Now let me preface. That wasn't me.
Okay.
His name was Ahmad.
Okay.
But it was a chance to see and also feel and have the confidence to say that I could do it. And that was impactful. And under the tutelage of the program and the people who were there to support me, I pursued advanced degrees after receiving my undergrad in mechanical engineering, and I was called a GEM fellow. So it's a national consortium for graduate students in engineering science. It's the national program where I received a scholarship. And to get this scholarship, they give you a list of schools that will accept the scholarship. And on that list was this University of Michigan. So I was initially going to go to another school, but I kind of changed my mind after I heard that Black students there were not graduating in graduate school in engineering and science at higher rates. And the University of Michigan had a very strong reputation for graduating students in graduate school. Many people nationwide and worldwide had been there. And I called, there was a lady named Anna, and in the engineering department, I said, hey, I'm coming out of undergrad in mechanical engineering, and I want to know, do you graduate Black students out of University of Michigan? She says,
what did she say?
She said, in the program that you're in, I haven't lost one yet.
All right. And Jason, I'm just so glad you brought that up, because this whole area of STEM, and for our listening audience, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, it doesn't have a lot of Blacks in it. And so I can imagine what you're talking about back then. It was a challenge. And from everything I know about you, I think I remember you got 2 masters, one in mechanical engineering and one in manufacturing. So like I said, you smart. Yeah, you one of the smart ones.
Well, you see, smart and stubborn kind of go hand in hand.
All right, that's
right?
okay.
So I think that, so that's an interesting story. So when I was at U of M, I came in as a graduate student in mechanical engineering, and I found out about a program called the Tauber Manufacturing Institute, which was a joint collaboration between the business school and the College of Engineering.
Okay.
And, I kind of always wanted to learn a bit about business. And I told my advisor I wanted to take classes in the B school as my electives in mechanical engineering. She said, you can't do that. I was like, what do you mean I can't do that? She's like, you can't do that based off of the curriculums, and the engineering department is the engineering department, the business department is the business department. She said, but there's this new program that just started. And so I applied for the program, and literally the day I got into the program, I found out at 8 o'clock in the morning that I got admitted, and they said, your first class is at 10 o'clock. So I literally got up, ran down to Central Campus, and if you go, University of Michigan, between North and Central Campus is more than an ocean.
Okay.
And
you jumped right into it.
And I jumped into the...
oh, fantastic.
So I jumped into Financial Accounting 101, and the professor there, he prided himself on doing this whole facial recognition. He memorized everybody's name and their face cards, and I didn't have a face card. And he came to me, he's like, who are you and why are you in my class? I said, well, they told me to be in here. And so we kind of got that situated, but I had 25% of my second master's degree, and I received 2 masters in 2 years from Michigan.
Phenomenal.
And
again, just one of them smart kids. So now, Jason, I know you from you went to Ford. You spent Ford Motor Company, and you spent a lot of time in the engineering field. But I'm curious. You ended up in nonprofits. Tell us about that transition and why.
Absolutely. So when I first came from Ann Arbor to the Detroit area to work at Ford, one of the things that I wanted to do was get actively involved in the community. So I joined 100 Black Men of Detroit. Okay. And also Ford Motor Company was providing educational programming for young people in a program called DAPSEP. So I worked with another group of engineers, and we provided classes for middle school students to get excited about engineering, and particularly excited about the automotive industry. So we had this great program. We actually taught kids about engineering and the product development process for designing cars using erector sets. And so that was a really phenomenal opportunity. It was a Saturday commitment that we made, and it was great. And I think every engineer wants to create little mini engineers.
Okay.
So we all think it's a great foundation for a lot of different opportunities, whether it's business, whether it's engineering, whether it's entrepreneurship, is to have that degree. And it teaches you to think critically. So when we
Now, I want to stop you on that because this whole thing about engineering and helping you think critically, and I want you to say a little bit more about that and why that's important for children and young people. What does engineering do for young people and help them in their education?
So engineering is a phenomenal discipline, and it is a discipline. I think one of the greatest assets, no matter whether you're mechanical, electrical, industrial engineer, engineering teaches you to think systematically.
Okay.
And in this world that we are in today, people want you to solve problems. And engineers are really good at solving really complicated problems. So having that foundation and having that academic pedigree to be able to solve very complex problems in the business world or even in the nonprofit world becomes an asset. So engineers are pros at looking at a problem and saying, okay, here's your variables, here's where you can potentially make some change, here's where your challenges are, and here's your opportunities. And also using a system to do that is where business appreciates the role of engineers.
And it's so interesting because you cannot talk to an educator today without them saying we really need to have young people think critically. And in order to compete in the global world, that's what they have to do. And so that's what you do. I mean, that's what you do. That's one of the many values of STEM and engineering. And so you took all of that to DAPSEP. So tell our listening audience what DAPSEP means and talk a little bit about the wonderful work you did.
So DAPSEP is the Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program. It is a roughly 40-year-old nonprofit here in the city of Detroit that provided young people about $5,000 a year STEM educational opportunities. So one of the big reasons why a lot of people in our community don't understand what engineers and scientists and doctors do is because they don't know any. Right. So we can talk about, particularly here in Detroit, you talk about the migration of the middle class out of the urban communities, out of the urban centers, and how back in the day, as they say, that you had the janitor living next to the doctor, so the janitor's kids could see what a doctor does and see where a doctor is. You don't have that today in our communities. But so DAPSEP was formed to give kids experience and opportunities and exposure to those fields, because this is not something that you kind of step into, right? And then the whole conversation of being smart is kind of stereotyped as being a negative in the Black community, and that's a whole different podcast. But how do we expose people to these great opportunities? Because there's a lot of people who are having fun doing engineering stuff. So engineers do things with their hands. We break stuff and fix stuff, and we break things for a reason. Right, to learn. And I think a lot of people, if they were exposed to these areas, would see the value and value in it. Now, it's not easy. Not everybody's going to make it. I mean, I firmly remember in my physics 2 class, one of my friends got their test back, and by the time the class was over, he dropped his major, dropped the class, and almost changed his name.
It was tough.
It was tough. It's not, but it takes discipline. It takes a little bit of stubbornness to pursue these fields. And you talk about the competition of the international competition, right? So I had a chance to talk to one of my fellow students while I was at Michigan, and he was from India. And he said, look, by the time I get to undergrad, by the time I'm 18 years old, or 20, because he had to do civil service, right? By the time I got to undergrad, I've already had 3 years of calculus. I've already had 2 years of physics. I've already had all of those things. So undergrad for me was a repeat of high school, right? Now I was top 10 in my class, but thank you Lord, I made it to engineering. But this was a repeat for him. So we talk about the competition and talk about what K-12 is preparing our children for, and particularly layer on that poverty, layer on that the challenges of infrastructure of urban education systems. It becomes a challenge, and that's what DAPSEP was going against, was giving people the exposure and opportunity, at least to the technology and to the opportunities associated with engineering. And so that led to my career. I was there for 12 years. And
how many young people did you serve? How many did you help?
Well, we served roughly around 5,000 a year. So I had some tremendous opportunities.
And you were there for how many years?
12 years.
So 12 times 5. So you meet about 60,000 kids?
Yep.
Phenomenal. So you're an engineer. So why would an engineer leave what I'm sure was a particularly financially lucrative job at Ford? Probably you could have gone, particularly being an African American with all your degrees, you could have gone right up the corporate ladder. Why come into the nonprofit world and help these little kids get exposed to fixing problems, solving problems?
So I left Ford. I had an incredible opportunity. When my predecessor at DAPSEP retired, there was no succession plan in leadership.
Okay.
So the nonprofit had a hole that it was trying to fill. Fortunately for me and for the organization, Ford Motor Company had an executive who actually be the chair of the board at that time. And when Steve Lewis, it's pretty well known in the community, he was he said, look, this program is too important to the community because it's giving kids an opportunity. It's too important to the corporate world in terms of we need the young people to go into these fields because we know that we're going to need some people to come work at Ford Motor Company and GM and Chrysler, etc. So he said, look, we'll find somebody, and this is during the good times when the economy was up and people were buying SUVs, big F-150s every day, when there was money in the automotive industry. And he said, look, we'll find somebody within to serve as executive director for about 2 years. Get you off the feet, get the organization stable, and then we'll move on. And so I found out about that. I called Steve and I set up a meeting and I said, look, I heard that you're looking for somebody to run DAPSEP for you. And I was talking to him. He said, you sure you want to do that? He's like, look, you're on a career path. You've been promoted every year.
That's right.
Ford had a lovely match program.
Right. That's my question.
All those good things.
Right.
So he said, you sure you want to do that? I said, yes, I did. It was a risk. And I had just gotten married at the time, and it was all sorts of things happening. And I said, sure. He said, okay. Closed the door. Didn't hear from him for 6 months.
Okay, but tell me why, Jason, you said yes.
So I said yes because it was an opportunity to give back to the community. It was an opportunity to use my skills from engineering in a different way. Is to engineer educational problems, right? Engineer educational problems for Black and brown people. And it was something that was very impactful. It's something that I wanted to do. But also this, on the other side of it, before I made the transition, made the decision to go to DAPSEP from Ford, I had a meeting as the interim executive, and I had a chance to meet Senator Stabenow, right? So meet a U.S. Senator, have a meeting with her, and I thought about where I was at Ford and if I was at DAPSEP, where I would be. And it was easier for me to have these type of opportunities for collaboration and networking with some really exciting individuals who were doing some great things and not climb that corporate piece. So I actually got a chance to leapfrog a little bit through the nonprofit world to get to a vantage point to meet and engage individuals, which I thought were fascinating.
Yeah, so you get all of that rolled into one. That's so interesting that you would say that, because oftentimes people don't realize how exciting the nonprofit world can in fact be. Yeah. Well, if you're just joining us, I'm here with my inaugural guest on Ignite to Impact. This is Dr. Geneva and Jason Lee, engineer, smart guy, CEO of Focus Hope, and the past CEO of an organization called DAPSEP. which exposes young people to careers in engineering. And we were just talking about the excitement that, in fact, you can find working in the nonprofit world, the opportunity to collaborate with others that you might not have run across with, the opportunity to give back, and then, of course, share your tremendous skills. And many of us in the community, Jason, know how you really turned that organization and grew that organization up in your leadership. You accomplished a number of things, but then just recently you decided to take another leap and become the CEO of Focus Hope. So tell us about Focus Hope and why.
Right. So Focus Hope is a $37 million nonprofit in the city of Detroit that does three primary things. That we focus on food, careers, and community. Food, we are the recipient of a commodity food program with the Department of Agriculture, where we provide food, and I'm talking groceries, for seniors who are 120% below the poverty line. And we provide for them on a monthly basis. We provide 41,000 seniors a month these commodities of food. Through a vast network of infrastructure facilities and real estate and volunteers, we are able to do that. From a community perspective, Focus Hope is located on the corner of Linwood and Oakman. It's a more challenged neighborhood in the city of Detroit. And we are there, and we've adopted that community to say that we can make a difference in the trajectory of that community. And so we've done a lot of things around education, around opportunities for employment, and around the environment. And it's a tremendous program there. We have a early Head Start and a Head Start and Great Start Center there for children, recognizing that is the future, and provide one of the best-in-class services in that capacity. And then our career work, our workforce development work started with Father Cunningham and Elder Jositis, who, as they were giving out food, they said, you know what, how can we prevent seniors from needing this food? Well, they got to have a good job. So what we've done is we've created a workforce development program focused primarily around manufacturing and information technology, and recently healthcare, to give workforce training. So we're a workforce training center in the city of Detroit that provides those areas, as well as what we call work readiness. And that is a very key component of our work. So those areas, food, career, and community, is what Focus Hope does. So I've been there for since August of 2016.
Okay.
And you come into an organization that's for 49 years old, you realize that there's some things in there that probably need to be kind of tweaked a little bit, kind of engineered.
Right up your alley.
and also in relation to the board of directors and the advocates for that program, it has a heavily automotive focus. So me coming into that role, understanding what the automotive industry is looking for, understanding how to utilize the resources of a nonprofit, and then looking forward to opportunities. I thought it was exciting challenge, right? So every engineer wants to solve problems, and this was a big problem to solve. So I took that. I decided to make a leap of faith. DAPSEP was in a good position. My deputy director at the time stepped up to become the executive director.
Oh, phenomenal! And that's just so important to have a succession in nonprofits. So Jason, so you've been there almost a year. What's your biggest challenge?
Well, every nonprofit has this lovely challenge of raising enough money to do the work that it wants to do. So from a fundraising and development standpoint, it's critical. It's a challenge. Once again, we're a $37 million nonprofit. And that includes a lot of in-kind.
So let's say that again. Go ahead, say it.
$37 million nonprofit organization.
And see, I'm so glad, and this is why I wanted to have you as my inaugural guest, because I figured you could really help position, particularly with your background and your experience, really kind of position these nonprofit organizations. These are not organizations where you're just sitting around having a good time and trying to just be do-gooder organizations. These are small and mid-sized businesses,
absolutely,
frankly, that you're running. Talk to us about that, this $37 million organization.
Oh, yeah. So as we talk about nonprofits, I think we need to just understand that nonprofit is really a tax designation.
That's right.
Okay. So we are a $37 million business, all right, that I have 2 million square feet of real estate. I have over 200 employees. I have 14 buildings and 32 acres. I have 4 satellite locations, and we have payroll. We have personnel, we have human resources, we got to pay benefits to folks. So we are a business. And I think that, as people get into nonprofit because they want to make a change in the community, they want to make an impact, they want to do something for the little guy or somebody who needs a hand up. But recognizing that there's some business acumen that needs to take place. So, as a nonprofit, I'll give you an example. So my directors, I have a Harvard-trained lawyer on my team. I have a young lady who runs my workforce program who has an MBA and 2 engineering degrees. She's another overachiever there. My CFO is tried and true, battle-tested, has multiple degrees also. So we have people with business acumen and credentials that are working in this space, and they're here, maybe the pay is not as good as a Ford Motor Company, but they're here because they make a difference. And I tell my staff all the time that, you're here. Very few people have the chance to make an impact in the lives of others. And we get a chance to do that on a daily basis as a nonprofit organization. But once again, we are a nonprofit business. So we have revenue and we have expenses. So our revenue happens to be from a philanthropy, from philanthropy. So we have to create the business case around supporting the work that we're doing. And that's not as easy as it may sound. Hey, you got a good idea, let's get this funded. But there's a whole process and system that's there, which admittedly I wasn't exposed to in school. I wasn't exposed to as a youth because there's not a lot of blacks in the nonprofit sector. Ironically, Michigan is blessed to have a significant number of foundations and nonprofit agencies, and I think it's considered one of the big 3 in states. New York, California, and Michigan have a high concentration of very large foundations. You think of the Kellogg Foundation after Kellogg cereal. You think of Kresge from Kmart. You think of the Mott Foundation. You think of these huge foundations that are here, as well as the corporate foundation, the General Motors Foundation, the Ford Fund, sure, and et cetera. So there's a lot of philanthropy here, and there's a lot of opportunities in that space. But it's one of those that many people come through by happenstance, or came up through the social worker ranks and followed up. So we're doing some great work, and it's really about exposure and leadership and providing a vision, providing a business case for the future and for the opportunities that we're able to provide to people that we service.
I just love it, Jason. And again, thank you for crafting out, for making that picture of what this nonprofit world really is about. That's so good, because oftentimes, like I said, people don't kind of think about that aspect and the skills that you need to have. That yes, you and they can go hand in hand, Jason. I believe you can be altruistic and want to make a difference and have the passion, and at the same time have that business acumen, those skills that are absolutely necessary for you to make the dream come real and to do work in the community. And you painted that so well. I want to ask you, aside from the money, and all that you do in the work that you've done, that you did previously with working with young people and exposing them, particularly boys of color, to boys and girls of color, to the engineering field and the opportunities there, and then moving now to a nationally respected, renowned organization like Focus Hope that's focusing on food and careers and workforce development. Given all of that in your community work, if you could have one thing, if you had that magic wand and you could wave it, what would the one thing be that you would want right here, right now in your community work?
Wow. So that's interesting. So in thinking about the populations that we service and thinking about the challenges that are there as well as the opportunities, I think the one thing that would be critical if we wanted to move the needle on Detroit and as well as we talk about Detroit, you got to talk about the African American community. I think that what I would like would be a revolution on the educational system and foundation that the African American community and or the challenged and disadvantaged community has today. Mm-hmm. If I think about the problems that many people are facing that we service, their foundation is education. And so having a strong educational foundation provides opportunities that are beyond just what you're going to see within the next year or two. It gives you the foundation to think critically, like an engineer, but also gives you opportunity to learn about financials and capital. And also, it's a tool that no one can take away from you once you have it. And as we look at our community and some of the challenges that are here in Detroit in particular, a lot of them are rooted in the fact that our educational system is not where it should be. And so if we went back, or if we had a elite private education for every child in the city of Detroit, what would that look like? If our K-12 system, our public K-12 systems was generating the type of outcomes as some of the elite Andovers and Phillips Exeters and Cranbrooks and Crenshaw Days and Kresge's of our community, what would our community look like? Would there be a need for Focus Hope? And what we're seeing today, there's a need for Focus Hope because of the deficits that are there.
So from your perspective, one of the things that would make a critical difference in our community is that all of our children have just an education that was excellent.
Absolutely. That
prepared them to do everything they could and be all they wanted to be. And Jason, thank you for doing the work that you do to play your part in making the world a better place and this community a better place. It's just been so delightful to have you, and I wish you all the wonderfulness that I know that your career is going to bring, and all the good things you're going to do for everyone.
Well, thank you, and to whom much is given, much is expected.
Absolutely. Thank you. We couldn't end on a better note. Jason Lee, CEO of Focus Hope and one of the bright stars of the future. Thank you for being here with Dr. Geneva on Ignite to Impact.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Ignite to Impact. Your host is Dr. Geneva Williams, an award-winning executive, facilitator, and master leadership strategist. Dr. Geneva is dedicated to inspiring others to get their leadership on and equipping the next generation with leadership tools and tips to help make the world a better place. Sign up to download Dr. Geneva's mini ebook on leadership. Get the show notes, links, and other resources at drgenevaspeaks.com. That's drgenevaspeaks.com. Thanks for listening. Please share the podcast to those in your community via Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Google+, and leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. When you do that, it helps others find the podcast easier. Send your questions or comments to info@drgenevaspeaks.com.